Hi everyone, in this video we're going to talk about AP style. So in AP style there are some bigger topics like addresses, times, dates, and headlines that we'll talk about. And there's also just a lot of random rules in AP style, and those kind of things are skills you'll learn as you're editing more and more stories. But you're definitely not expected to be an AP style pro at the beginning. So the first thing I'd want to talk about is formatting an address. So the rules for that uh, are when there's a address that has a number at the beginning, which would be a specific numbered address, then you would have the number and then the directional cue, like north, east, south, west, whichever one of those. You'll abbreviate it, so E, and then put a period. And then the street name, and then you would do street would be abbreviated like that, and for which kind it is, there's a rule. It's like abs, Avenue, Boulevard, Street are going to be abbreviated in this case, but if it was like road, drive, any of those other uh, types of streets that there could be, those would be spelled out every time because that's how AP style does it. Um, and also to mention, first through ninth would be spelled out, whereas like 10th Street, if that exists, would be 10 TH, 11 TH instead. So another case would be if you were talking about an address, it's a little bit more general. You would say that it's a street name without the specific numbered address, and that would be something like East Green Street, West Green Street. Usually just talking about a general location, but not always like an exact address. So in that case, you would spell out the direction east, west, south, north. And then you would also spell out whatever type of street it was, street, avenue, boulevard, and that's because it's more of a general one. And then there's also compound streets, which would mean like there's two streets that are intersecting. And so if they were different kinds, if it was an avenue and a street, or any combination like that, you would capitalize and spell both of them out. But if they were the same, like Green and Wright Streets, if you're talking about that intersection, then you would spell it out, but you wouldn't capitalize it. You can see streets like that. Um, so next I should talk a little bit about AP style time formatting, A dot M dot and P dot M dot. It'll always be like that. Make sure the periods are there. In one space after the digit. So 9 p.m. would be like that. And something also important is you wouldn't add 400 because you don't need the 00. It's obvious. It's just gonna be 4 instead. And you don't say 12 p.m., 12 a.m. You say noon and midnight. And when you use a time frame, then you would use an end dash, as you can see here. Oh, and also, yeah, there is no space between. And next, I would talk a little bit about date formatting. Um, AP style will abbreviate a good amount of months out of the year, but it's also important to remember that that's only if they're talking about an exact date. So, like August 25th would be abbreviated like period 25. But there's these shorter months which are always spelled out. Sometimes people shorten the March, but AP style does not. So we will have to check for that as well. Um, but if you're just talking about something that happened in January, then you would spell out January because you're not talking about a certain day in the week. Um, and if the story is talking about something that's happened within the last week from whenever it was published, then you use the day of the week, Sunday through Saturday, one of those. And you wouldn't say like, so like today's the 28th. If I was talking about August 25th, I would say Thursday rather than August 25th. Um, and if it's within the year, then the year is not needed. If it's longer than that, then you would include the year. And also, when talking about a date, it's just going to be the month abbreviated in the number, not first, not second, nothing like that. And I'd also like to talk about headlines a little bit. So every headline needs a subject and a verb. Um, and that verb should not have an ing at the end of it. Uh, you shouldn't use the or like a derivative of the, which would be like they, them, these, their. Those kind of words should not be in the headline. And if you wanted to use and, you can replace it with a comma. And you should always use active voice. Try to use present tense. Past tense can work in the right context, but in general, try to keep it present because it makes the most sense for the story. Um, and then more like general things are that should be relevant. Like it should reflect what the story is trying to talk about. It should be short and sweet because it's really the first thing that a reader is going to see, and it should catch their attention. Uh, and it should also respect what you think the author would want. Like it's since it is the first thing that a reader would see, remember that it should also be something that the author would like for readers to see first. Um, in a news feature story, you'd want to make sure that it's uh, not a biased headline. Uh, an opinions one is obviously going to have bias because that's the section. Yeah, try to make it fun, interesting, and eye-catching. And the only word to be capitalized will be the first word and something that's a proper noun or name. Um, yeah. And you can also use like a colon, and that would be basically starting a new phrase or sentence. There's a lot of random AP style rules, but here are some of them. Uh, when you're talking about a number, um, 1 through 9 are gonna be spelled out like Onenine. But any number 10 and above would be a numeral, which means like 10 instead. Um, And one big thing for us is that we don't use the Oxford comma. And so that means you would get rid of the last comma in a list that includes and. Sometimes stories use that a lot. And that's something that you would want to get rid of. Like, if you can read it without the that and it makes sense, then you should be deleting it. If a sentence has a colon and then a full sentence after the colon, uh, that second sentence will be capitalized at the beginning. And within a quote, ellipses will have a space on each side, which is the dot dot dot. And then this is just about how like a quote should be broken up. So a quote that has more than one sentence will do one sentence of the quote, and then you'll say attribution, which means you're just saying who said it. And then you'll continue the rest of that quote. And then when you're using another quote with the person that you already mentioned, then you can just have their attribution be their last name said. And if somebody's title is in the attribution after the first sentence of the quote, said would be first, like here. Otherwise, we'd have it be full name said. Unless you can make it sound good with having said after. So, like, if it was head coach Brett Bielema said, that would be fine. You wouldn't have to do said head coach Brett Bielema. A few other things. So, within a quote, if somebody's trying to change a word to be more clear, they would use parentheses and not brackets to put in a different word. AP style does canceled, canceling, and cancellation with single L, double L. Advisor is going to be with an E, not an O. Healthcare is 2 words, and COVID-19 has the hyphen. Another random one, toward, not towards. All right, that's it for this one.